Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session, Securing Your Remote Workforce webinar led by Adrian Amos of Synergy Technical. I'm Dan Finn, and I'll be moderating and monitoring the Q&A section found on the right side of the screen, and we will jump right in. I'll start with a quick background on Synergy Technical, and then we will pass the mic to Adrian. Synergy Technical is a technology consulting firm headquartered out of Richmond, Virginia, and we have offices up and down the East Coast. Our staff is entirely remote right now, but they're located in the US, Canada, and India. We have deployed and manage over 2 million licenses of Microsoft 365 for our clients, and our clients span across 70 countries and all 50 states. We've been awarded with multiple honors from Microsoft. Most recently, we were awarded the prestigious Microsoft 365 Security Deployment Partner of the Year, which we are against some strong competition for. Our strength in enabling a secure and productive workforce in complex environments led us to that wonderful recognition, and Adrian Amos played a large part in that. Adrian travels the nation running security workshops for our clients and is speaking today on securing the remote workforce. Adrian, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here today. As Dan mentioned, I've been all over the country. I've actually been all over the world doing portions of this same process. I have about 20 years of infrastructure background behind me as well. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. Obviously, we've all been doing a lot of working from home. I had the privilege of being actually in the office today. It's a very rare day for me to be here, but my country internet out in rural Hanover County, Virginia doesn't usually scale to this sort of need. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop here and steal Dan's presentation. And so we're going to start talking about what we need to do, what we need to be thinking about when our users are working from home, right? There's going to be a few differences between how they work from home versus how they work in the office. Not really going to spend a lot of time talking about VPN or securing your VPN today. The reality is we need to make sure that we can have users who are operating with secure identity from anywhere in the world, able to get to our workloads from devices that we trust, or if we allow them to come in with personal devices, that we enable the right set of controls to make sure that we only serve up the applications they need at the level that they need to be able to see them. So I'm going to start with my Azure Active Directory today. We're going to be looking at two basic requirements, right? First is we're going to make sure that we're going to recommend that users always be able to change their own passwords. This is kind of a paradigm shift for a lot of security shops, because we typically tend to think that we want our IT staff to know, and we want to manage a little bit of this process, especially when users are remote. But if a user can manage their own password, we can generally see about a 30% reduction in help desk tickets. And that actually also kind of starts the process of making the users feel a little bit more self-sufficient. And with Azure Active Directory, and if our machines are Azure Active Directory joined, this user process is as simple as hitting Control-Alt-Delete and saying change a password. That's going to send that user out to their account management page in Azure Active Directory. They're going to be able to change that password, and they're going to keep on going. That's a production value. From a real actual functional security perspective, the other thing that we really want to make sure we have in our favor is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is the absolute single most important thing that you can do for your users' identities beyond any other workload that you can light up for it. Azure Active Directory's multi-factor authentication capabilities are proven to reduce successful attacks against identity by 99.9%. And so we have some great controls that we can enable with this, right? So generally when we start talking about MFA, we're looking at whether or not we're going to allow a text message, or we're going to allow an authenticator app to send a notification. But we also have some additional controls here too that I really want to show you because they're very powerful. If I come into my authentication methods section of my Azure Active Directory, we can actually support FIDO2 security keys, Microsoft Authenticator passwordless sign-in, and actually there is some limited support now for actually having users that are frontline workers do text-based full authentication. But what I have done in my demo environment here is I have enabled the Authenticator passwordless sign-in. We can scope this to all users. We can select a select group of users that we want to enable for it. We can come in here and allow them to optionally register their own devices. We can do all kinds of fun things too, but what it allows for is when the user attempts to authenticate into a new application that's protected by Azure AD, they're going to put in their username, and it's going to come back and show them a number, and it's going to say, you're going to receive a message with this number on your smartphone. And what that does is it cuts down on the fatigue of users getting the one-time notifications of, do you approve, do you approve, do you approve, do you approve? And even though we're already seeing the 99.9% reduction with having that do you approve in place, users do get tired, and eventually they may hit yes, I approve for an authentication that wasn't actually them. By showing them a number and saying enter this number, and then the application shows 3 numbers, they have to select the right one. So now we've got an additional interstitial that makes the user say, what number am I supposed to press? This didn't come from me. Or, oh yeah, cool, 82 is on the screen, I press 82 and I'm in. And there's no more typing of a password. We are seeing a strong transition right now toward complete and total passwordless authentication. So again, the only real purpose then behind having that that password protection in place is that when the password expires, we want to make sure that they have the authority to go back and change it on their own. Here at Synergy and at Microsoft, the users generally only know they have a password when it's time to change it. We don't use it for actual authentication. So we've covered that a little bit, right? But what we also want to be able to do is see some information about behavioral patterns. We want to know when users are doing things with their credentials that might be a little bit risky. Office 365 has the advanced threat protection that allows us to see when a user clicks on a malicious link or goes to attempts to download an attachment that's malicious. But if they do something where they actually pass a credential in and it winds up in the wild, then they actually end up on the user risk list, the risky users. That credential now, because it is seen in the wild, is flagged as a risky credential. And we can set up policies that say if that user attempts to log in again, yes, we're going to throw up an MFA prompt, but we're also going to require that they change that password immediately. So it doesn't really matter that they're not in our office or anything like that, but we're actually going to get better password control, MFA prompts to govern their ability to get in, and we're going to get MFA prompts on top of password reset requests to make sure that it's really the person that we want, changing the password that we want, getting prompted with the interstitials that we want, making sure that their full end-to-end identity lifecycle is complete. But what is all that really going to protect? Well, what we're looking to protect really is the data in our applications. So we need to be able to define what makes up a secure computing environment and a secure application environment. To do that, I'm going to do almost all of my work here in Intune. Now, Microsoft has introduced a new Intune interface, and it's called the endpoint.microsoft.com. It's not 100% ready yet. So if you have existing policies that are already built in Intune, or if you've started piloting an Intune deployment, transitioning from that into the new endpoint.microsoft.com is a great way to go, but it is actually a transition because the policies that you've created do not automatically ingest into that. So what we do is I have another computer sitting next to me, and we're going to show you a little bit about how this computer works. But I have Diego Siciliani. He's going to be my guinea pig user today. And we're going to deploy some applications to Diego to his trusted device. We're also going to have Diego using his personal computer at home because, hey, he's at home. Maybe he's got an old laptop sitting around and he's sitting in the den and he remembers he forgot to send an email. Is he going to go all the way to his office to grab the work computer? If it's Office 365, he's probably going to try to jump on the web, send that email and go. Do we want to allow that? So we have some questions that we got to answer for ourselves. But from the corporate device perspective, I need to be able to make sure that I can continue to govern the device no matter where it is. And I don't want him to have to come in and consume GPOs, right? I don't want him to have to get in on the VPN in order to change a password, in order to reset GPO settings, in order to deploy an application. So with Intune, I'm going to have the ability to define a whole bunch of device configuration profiles for him, for his environment. And you can see in this environment, I have a lot. In fact, I can do somewhere between 99 and 100%. I keep hearing that there's a thing I can't do that 100%, 99 to 100% of the same things that I can do with GPO, I can now do in Intune. I haven't yet found the thing that I can't do, but I keep looking for it. So if you know what it is, shoot me an email. I'd love to know. I can define the Hello for Business security requirements that actually enable MFA directly out of Windows 10. I can define what his Outlook experience should be when he first fires up the computer. I can define whether or not virtualization should be enabled in the BIOS for a limited subset of computer types. I can define what his start menu and taskbar should look like. And if I change this in the cloud, it's going to immediately reach out and change the settings on his device as soon as he's on or connected to the internet. I don't, again, need him to be connected to VPN or ever touch my network in order to be able to get full control of this stuff. I can solve the age-old question of what happens when you shut the lid. Does it shut the computer down? Does it go to sleep? And I can use that in conjunction with things like making sure that his device gets the right updates at the right time. We can actually also define software update rings and make sure that he gets the right updates, the right feature updates, and all that kind of fun stuff. So we can control the configuration of the device, but then we can also use that configuration to consume compliance too. Is this device in compliance? Should I allow a device that is or isn't in compliance to gain access to my corporate applications? So before we even get to that piece, we want to make sure that this device is enrolled in all of our cloud security products. So in our environment here, all devices, the moment they are joined to Azure Active Directory, also get enrolled into Defender ATP, which is Microsoft's EDR solution. At that point, I have full threat and vulnerability management across all of Diego's devices, or his computers anyway. I can do his Android and his iOS, but I haven't done it yet in my environment. I'm going to be able to see what applications he has that are up to date, that are out of date, whether or not we need to do anything, make any changes. In fact, if I come in here and I realize that Google Chrome is out of date, I can actually click right here in the EDR, in the threat and vulnerability management thing. I can create a remediation option of open a ticket in Intune. So I throw it right back at my Intune guy who's going to come over here. He's going to come into security, device security, and hit tasks, and he's going to see that he has an assignment to update Chrome. This is going to allow me to actually build a new policy to push a Chrome update to these users if I so choose. Once it's done, I can throw it back over, and then the EDR guy will get notification that this has happened. So now I've got full software inventory on his device. I've got the ability to calculate whether or not his device is at risk. And in fact, in our environment, we may have some devices that are at risk or not. Here we go, one's at a medium risk based on detections that are happening. And again, he's never touching the office, right? This is all just fully reporting back into the cloud. So I'm in my Intune, I'm looking at the compliance of the device. My policies say that my devices have to be at low risk to be considered compliant. Well, what happens if they're not at low risk? You can see it looks like I've got some devices that are a little bit wonky here. But if I look in here and see, okay, so if a device is not compliant, if it's not at low risk or below, it's going to get marked non-compliant immediately. Okay, that may have some value. It's going to get remotely locked after 1 day. They're not going to be able to use this device until they get it compliant. And it's going to also send an immediate email to the user saying, you know, your device has been detected as being at risk or not compliant. So what does that enable me to do? Well, it actually enables me to feed a conditional access policy. And conditional access is the real meat of how we're going to make all of this fun stuff work and tailor an experience that allows our users to work the way they want to, but also make sure that we do zero trust, get the security controls we need. So I have a number of policies here that determine what level of access a user should get to my applications based on whether or not they have met MFA requirements, if they're coming from a personal device versus a corporate device, if they're coming from a country that I don't trust, or even a specific country that I know I should never ever trust for whatever reason, all kinds of fun stuff too. And even we can just go ahead and just block certain legacy protocols. And this is one you need to do right now too. If you have access to conditional access policies, blocking legacy authentication, because that is the #1 attack surface of all Office 365 systems. So we can come in here, we can say block Yammer on a non-compliant device. Well, what does that mean? So the device that we saw over here is not compliant because it's at a medium risk level. I don't want that user consuming Yammer from that device. If we come in and we look at, let's see, we're going to say all users trying to get to Yammer specifically, and I can choose over here on the other side, I want to do all of Office 365, a non-compliant device, no Office 365. I'm not going that crazy. I'm just looking at, I want to do it for one specific workload because I do like to attack my poor users from time to time. One application, Yammer, and we want to say that the device is not compliant. Then what do? Well, we just want to block access to that. So we're going to block access to that application from non-compliant devices. All right. So let's see if we can figure out who our user is that's not compliant. I hope it's Diego because that would be fun. Oh, it's not Diego, it's Nestor. So I ran some attack code on Nestor's computer, but I don't have Nestor's computer with me today. But trust me when I say if I go to Yammer the Yammer website on Nestor's computer, it would say, sorry, you can't get there from here. Your device is not compliant. But the good news is Nestor has an email letting him know what he needs to do to get compliant because we've crafted that for him. And we also sent a notification to the security admin. So we're going to come back and look at our other conditional access policies. Remember, Diego is at home. Diego is checking his email throughout the day. He's doing normal stuff from a normal device on the corporate network. And in fact, I'm going to come over here into my meeting and I'm going to steal sharing control as Diego. And I want you to see what Diego sees. Let's see, share my whole desktop. All right, so Diego is operating in email. Diego's bouncing around, he's looking at stuff, he's got analytics, he's angry but he didn't get donuts in the break room the other day. Normal stuff. Now Diego is also going to be in the cloud, right? He's in his Outlook online. He's seeing the same stuff. It looks like I need to make that a little bit bigger there. Okay, same emails. Fresh donuts, fresh from quarantine. There you go. Now Diego on his work computer is going to go to SharePoint. Normal stuff. Diego's going to go to SharePoint. He's going to look at some files. He's going to do some stuff here. He's going to go to the media preview packages team or SharePoint site, and he's got a document he needs to work on to make sure that things are ready for Monday morning. He's going to jump out here and look at this Contoso Electronics projects next year's blah, 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 blah. Now, one other thing I want you to notice here too is as I am in these environments as Diego, I've got a little briefcase right here. And if I hover over that, it's going to tell me that this website is managed by the corporate infrastructure. So it's managed by my tenant. And actually, if you look here too, in Teams, even though we're looking at cascading windows, I have another one here too. And that's going to factor in a minute on some other stuff that we're going to talk about. Now, Diego's done his work in this. He's really happy with this. He's going to decide he's going to save a copy of this guy. He's going to download a copy and he's going to put it on his local machine. Okay, downloaded, no problem at all. We can see it sitting right there and fine. Now, Diego, though, has decided to turn off the work computer and he is going to go back to his other side of the house. And Diego is now sitting at his personal computer. Okay, this is Diego right here. You can see I'm in the same environment. I've got the same emails here, fresh donuts from quarantine. You see Diego's smiling face right here. Now, in this environment, though, I've got a little bit less control. This is not a corporate owned device, so I don't get the briefcase telling me that this environment belongs to Contoso. But Diego needs to go back and open that SharePoint document again. Only now, because he's not on a corporate device anymore, he gets a notification that access to SharePoint Online is monitored. Now he can clear this notification for a week and that's fine, but anything that he does from this point forward now in SharePoint Online from that personal device is going to be monitored. And that's a critical control difference, right? Because now we've actually enabled Diego to work from whatever device he wants to in SharePoint, but there's more. So he's going to go back into that media preview packages and he's going to remember that there was an edit that he forgot to make. So he's sitting in the den by the fire. He's an HR executive. Life is just wonderful for Diego, except for the fact that it's a little bit slow. He's going to come in here, hit documents, and patient. It is my computer, I promise. All right, so here you go. Next year's earnings. All right, we're going to make some changes to this from our personal computer. This is going to be great. All right, I can work on it. I can say, oh, let's see. We've decided that we're gonna change the spelling of this. It's not going to be projects next year's or projects next year's. It's going to be anticipates. All right, there we go. No problem. I can make a change. And I'm going to now say I want a copy of that on my personal desktop. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Diego's going to steal some content. Download that file. Oh no, download blocked. And I can see if I come over here and open this blocked.txt, sure enough, the file was blocked since it contained data that is not allowed to be downloaded. Now that is not the experience we saw on Diego's corporate machine. And the reason it's not the same experience is because of this policy right here. So conditional access now allows us to take a separate set of controls based on whether or not the user is coming from a device that we explicitly trust or a device we know nothing about. I want to allow Diego to work in those documents because I trust Diego. But I don't want Diego to be able to download a copy of that file to his personal machine because I can't run antivirus on it. I can't do EDR on it. I can't see what it's going to do or if it's got a keystroke logger from somewhere else or whatever. Maybe, you know, something exciting that I don't want to expose my data to. And the way that I've done this, again, very simple, right? I'm just going to say all users for this one specific application. In my case, again, I chose SharePoint Online for this one. Yammer for the previous one. I could do all of Office 365. I got a couple of conditions here. I'm looking at devices that are not Azure AD joined and there's no known compliance. For those, I'm going to use session control. I'm going to come in and set block downloads with conditional access app control. And we can do this level of control for all of the Office 365 suite applications today. This has been a long-standing use case challenge, and anybody who's done the SharePoint game for a long time, especially on SharePoint Online, may recall that 5 years ago we had limited control over this as long as the device was Active Directory joined. Now we don't need that. We just need to know whether or not the device is Azure AD joined and or marked as compliant. I'm not going to mark Diego's home computer compliant, but I'm going to let him work and keep on trucking and doing what he needs to do as long as he keeps the data inside the infrastructure. So that's great. Now we've got all of our configuration policies here. We're defining how the environment should work. We've got all of our compliance policies, deciding whether or not we should allow our users to get into our applications at certain levels. But if you've done any work with compliance policies at scale, you know that that is a heck of a lot of a thing to keep track of, right? That's really, really challenging, especially when you try to get on top of who has what assigned. I can see that it's assigned, but I don't have a lot of great visibility beyond that. One thing that we do now have, though, is the ability to define policy sets. And policy sets allow me to take a standardized set of policies and apply them to a standardized set of conditions. So in my case, I have developed a standard image. Every device that I manage, whether it's physically in the office or if it's sitting at home or the user's in Botswana, I don't care. They're going to get this set of policies. And in addition to that, they're also going to get my specific corporate controlled deployment of Office Pro Plus. So the controls that I need to set up for my Office Pro Plus deployment are in there. Now, there's not a lot else that's in this one, but I do have another policy set that also includes some other things like Windows information protection. So maybe I have a certain subset of users that need to get the standard image, but then they also need to get some additional policies laid on top. And I can take two policy sets and stack them up and give that user the experience that I need to make sure that they're not taking data with them. So with that, I'm going to jump back over to Diego, because Diego does something else that we don't really love at Contoso. Diego is, much like myself, at home, a Google user. And that's fine. We want to allow Diego to work the way he wants to work. But you can see that Diego over here has his Google Drive mapped. And if he comes out to his Google Chrome, he's able to go to his drive.google.com. And if I can type, it'll be great. And we can see we should see that we don't have a lot of information here. We have a getting started document, but we also are mapping Google Drive. Okay, so we want to see our normal getting started stuff. Now, I have configured Diego's device to do the normal stuff of synchronizing the desktop and synchronizing my documents to Google Drive, but there's nothing there. So what I'm going to do is, as Diego, I'm going to go into my Contoso OneDrive, and I'm going to grab some documents here. And
Adrian, real fast, I just want to make sure, are you looking to share Diego's desktop right now? Because we're still seeing yours.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, no worries.
It's interesting. It says it's sharing, but it's not. Let me try that again. Share desktop. That was weird. All right, so anyway, like I said, Diego is a Google user at home. He's got his Google Drive documents set up here. The only thing that's in there is a getting started document. There's nothing there, but Diego is going to come into his actual Contoso documents, and let's see if I can make the view a little prettier on this so you can actually see it. I want to see extra large icons. Now, there's that briefcase again. That briefcase is coming from my Windows Information Protection policy out of Intune. And what I'm going to do is, as Diego, I'm going to decide that I want to take these documents, I want to copy them over to my Google Drive. I'm going to copy them so I don't lose them. And it looks like it worked, right? Because what this document folder is on Google Drive or in the computer is actually just a local folder representing where the documents are going to go to copy out to Google Drive. Diego thinks he's done himself a great job. Now he's going to go back to his den computer that I don't control, and he's going to work on these things, and no problem. He's bypassed all that SharePoint silliness. But if you look, you're also going to see that now we've got little red X's on all these things. Well, what does that mean? If I come down here to my backup and sync from Google, let me see if I can make that go away. Can't sync items. Now it says 21 because I've done this a couple days in a row here, but I now have upload errors coming from those files that I'm attempting to synchronize to my Google Drive. So by default, Diego is not able to actually package up my data and send it with him to his personal computer. I have done nothing with Azure Information Protection, which is one of my favorite security workloads. This is simply leveraging Windows Information Protection managed from Azure, from Intune, to say applications coming, or these subsets of applications are managed by Contoso, and data should not be allowed to leave to other locations. Now, I can prove this out by coming back over to my Google Drive here, and I'm going to refresh. And I've still only got that one PDF file. Now, again, we trust Diego. Diego has said that for whatever reason, he needs to be able to work on this shipping budget, and he's just got to do it from his home computer. I have set this policy up to allow overrides, and the only thing that Diego has to do to be able to move this document to his Google Drive is come in here and flip this one thing from personal to work, or from work to personal. The briefcase is gone. And if Diego comes back over here and hits view and says retry, in a moment, that little red X is going to be gone, and that file will now be in Google Drive. There we go. You see it synchronizing. Trying to synchronize anyway. Let's see what happens. We'll be as patient as we can. Oh, you see all the other ones are failing. That's a good thing. There we go. Look at that. The shipping budget now has a green check mark, and there it is. So now we can actually enable granular file-by-file control if we want. Now, we generally are not going to want to do that. We're generally going to want to set it up pretty simply. Now I'm going to steal the screen back from Diego here and show you exactly what that policy looks like and how we're going to do that. So I mentioned that Diego is getting this, this whip with overrides policy. These are not fun policies to build. I don't recommend that you go out on your own and start building these today, but just want to show you the control of what we can do here. We can actually target this per application if we want to. We can come in and define the subset of applications of our Office 365 experience that we want to control this for. We can also come in and define what our network boundaries are. What is Teams connecting to? Is it connecting to Office 365 data on the back end, or is Teams actually fronting access into a Dropbox directory on the back end? So we can actually set what our cloud resources are that comprise those applications, those websites, those URLs, IP addresses, whatever. And we can define, like I said, domains, proxy servers, IP4, IPv6, and neutral resources. And neutral resources are some that may have slight personal and slight business needs. We can even overlay rights management into this integration too, to make sure that even if Diego flips the switch and makes it a personal document, it still gets encryption built into it automatically. So we're able to do all of that, right? We're able to control the device. We're defining the configuration of the device. We're defining the compliance requirements of the device. We are requiring that the user come in with MFA. So when we come in here and we look at Diego's activate or his sign-ins, we're going to be able to see whether or not he's getting in with or without MFA. Now, in Diego's case, I actually only have him set to MFA if he does something risky like traveling to a new location. So you're going to see there's no authentication details here, but I am also going to be able to see which of my conditional access policies is actually taking effect, defining whether or not he's able to get into that content. Let's see. Require multi-factor authentication. So if he comes from Estonia, it's going to do something fun for him. We can also see, though, anytime anybody has made a change to Diego's account. And this is something that really trips up a lot of folks when we start talking about monitoring user access, right? We tend, as administrators, to conflate sign-ins with audit events. And in the Office 365 and the Microsoft 365 world, they're not the same thing. An audit event is something changed with the account, whereas a sign-in is pretty straightforward, a sign-in. But when we go into these sign-ins, we're going to be able to get all sorts of wonderful information about these things. What was the location? What was the device that was coming into it? Do we have any other information about let's see, these are all coming from the same egress IP address. So can we see which one is the actual Azure AD device? So we got all this wonderful information that we can use to correlate whether or not the devices are meeting the requirements that we set up in our conditional access policies. But we can also deploy security baselines. And this is one of those things that actually has a lot of meat on it for admins who are looking to transition from GPOs over to Intune policies. Microsoft has correlated, or that's probably not the right word, curated the most important security settings and the best practices for general device security settings across the board and built them into security baseline packages. And we can deploy these profiles, these security baseline profiles, out into our environments. Now mine are a little bit outdated because they don't do the granular control that I specifically want, but I can look into these things and see that they have settings across the vast majority of the device configuration space. So how credentials are delegated and the UI and data protection, I mean, all that stuff is built into one master policy. We can deploy that out and then set minor changes as we need. And Microsoft is now strongly recommending that that be the way that we start looking at defining our baseline device policies. So let's see, we've made sure the user can change their own password. We've made sure they're coming in with MFA. We've made sure that they are getting the experience that we want, the security experience we want from a secure device that we trust versus slightly more restrictive access from a device that we don't necessarily trust. We've governed their ability to get to particular applications based on whether or not the device is marked as compliant. But let's say for a moment that we actually still have an active challenge with that device. The user is at home, they're trying to do something, and we're seeing some spurious activity on the device. I'm going to not try to find Diego's computer. I'm going to search for him up here in Defender ATP, and I'm going to find his device right there. There we go. EO75, that's his machine. Now I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, that Diego has now got malicious code. And in fact, let me see if I can find a piece of malicious code to run on his machine right now. Might make it more fun. Also might take a moment. All right, hopefully while that's running, we'll be able to do a little bit of work here. So Diego is not in the office, right? In our traditional EDR solutions, we might have had a limitation where if the user wasn't in the office, we couldn't run down the hall and pull the plug on. With Defender ATP, we can now isolate the machine. So we can actually set that this machine is no longer able to connect to anything around the world except for the actual Defender ATP service. And that's going to be really powerful because that's going to allow us to continue to run diagnostics on that machine while also protecting our corporate resources. And if I click on that button, you can see I do get a crazy button. I can allow them to continue to send Outlook and Teams and Skype for Business messages. That generally is just going to give them a great opportunity to keep on sending out more copies of the virus. So we're not usually going to recommend that, but it's going to force us to provide a justification for why we're doing this. Once we got the machine isolated, though, we're going to be able to do fun things like collecting an investigation package, forcing an antivirus scan on the user, or we can actually also come in and initiate a live response session. Now, I did actually just manage to execute some malicious code on Diego's machine, and I know that live response session will not work while there's an active investigation happening. So I'm going to come back over here. Actually, let's see if we can beat that live investigation. See if we can get it happening before the investigation even starts. Probably not going to let me. Hopefully it's quicker than I am. Come on. Yep. It's not going to let me. All right. So we do. Oh, no, it is going to let me. Fantastic. All right. Beat it. Beat it quicker than it could report its challenge because I literally just hit execute right before I said I got it running. All right. So we want to see what's running on that remote computer. Got to type in the right place. Now, I happen to know, based on what I've done over here, that I have a malicious code injection into a Notepad document. So I want to see if Notepad is running on Diego's computer. Now, I am actually running all this in a very restricted and minimal command console that's actually a built-in integrated component of Windows 10 as part of the machine tooling for working with Defender ATP. Now, I see a whole bunch of stuff here. There's Notepad right there. There's the PID for Notepad right there. If I want to kill that, I can just hit remediate process and type in the PID 40524. And you're going to have to trust me on this one because I don't want to hold up Diego's computer, but it's going to kill that Notepad process. Remediate command and process. I just got a notification on Diego's computer that enterprise unwanted application was found. Let me see if I can capture that. There we go. And I'm going to grab the whole screen. There we go. All right. And then I'm going to steal the share back. And there was the notification right there that the enterprise threat and protection application, unwanted application was found. You can see the timestamp matches when we're talking right here. So it did, it reached in and found this application was running, that it should not be there, and it removed it. It killed it right there in front of me. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my session from Diego's machine. I know that that in real life is not actually fixing the problem. In fact, let me go ahead and do that. I'll show you some of the other fun things that we can do. Right. All right, so we can see right over here when we killed the process. Oh, hold on. All right. We see that the remediation process finished. It finished. It killed the process. Process is gone. If I now try to run processes again, if I'm still even connected, yeah, not connected. All right. I'm going to be able to see a full history of every command that I've entered at this machine as well. Once it comes up. There we go. I can see that I connected to it, I pulled the processes, that I remediated the process. I'm going to be able to see the full output data of every single one of these things, and all this is going to be fully audited. And what's also fun is that if we start looking at this from a holistic view of our security, we also now have the security.microsoft.com dashboard. And if I go to my Action Center, if not immediately, then within the next couple of minutes, I'm going to see all the actions that I explicitly took against Diego's computer reported to this centralized security.microsoft.com Action Center. There we go. There they are, right there. Live response command started, pulled the processes and killed them. And you can see across the last 6 months, all the times where I have done similar things against my remote computers. So if you have concerns about a rogue admin jumping in and grabbing live response control and doing things, we can actually see aggregated into one view all the times that has happened, what they've been doing. In the next moment or so, an incident should bubble up here. There it is. Defense evasion from that same device was detected. And if I look at it, it's not been assigned. I'm going to assign it to myself. I'm going to say, hey, we're in the process of actively investigating this. We don't know yet whether or not it's a false alert, but it's an active investigation. And now I'm going to be able to see all the events that have been a part of this thing too. And if I open the incident page, see, I'm going to see all the MITRE attack methods and everything. If I come in and hit the investigations, I'm going to see the suspicious process injection occurred, go to the investigation itself. Oops, that's where it's going to try to throw me into this dashboard, and it didn't succeed. That's okay. Let's get my incidents here. Come on. There we go. I'm doing this from inside of Defender HTTP to work a little cleaner. Okay. Yep, here we go. Automated investigation is running. Let's look at that investigation. We're going to see the entities that have been found here. And literally, I have no infrastructure. This is all just devices connected to the internet. There's nothing else happening here. Right now, the system is running an antivirus scan on the machine to see if there's any persistent remaining portions of the threat. In the meantime, though, this device should now be at a medium severity right here. So let me see if I can get to Yammer. Aha, all right, let me steal the screen back so I can show you exactly what that looked like. So I realized I forgot to steal the screen back. There we go. An attempt to go to Yammer is now presented with, you cannot access this right now because this device is now marked as a medium risk level. As soon as that risk level is cleared, Azure Active Directory and Intune will feed that information back into the conditional access policy to allow this user to gain access back into Yammer. And that is all from home, from wherever I might happen to be. I don't need any corporate access, any VPN, anything to make all of that happen. So there you go. I mean, that's really kind of the fundamentals of how we're going to do. Oh, the one thing I didn't really touch on. And I wanted to make sure I do before we get out of here is I want to talk a little bit about client applications. So Diego also happens to be running a full corporate device, and traditionally if Diego was going to call up and say, hey, I really need XYZ application, we might tell him to go to the internet and pull that down and he would be able to consume it for himself. But what I really want to do is I want to make sure that we have standardized deployment methodologies for our applications. Inside of our environment, we've chosen a few key applications to deploy. In fact, before I even get there, I'll show you what we've done because I kind of like it. So Windows 10 comes with a lot of fun things that we don't really necessarily want our users to be playing with. Maybe we don't really want them using Candy Crush Saga. I have connected this device, this environment, to the Windows Store for Business. And I have gone in and I have taken these applications here, Candy Crush and the Netflix and all these fun things that are baked into Windows, Spotify, Xbox game console, all that fun stuff, and mark those to be automatically uninstalled. Now, again, your users are home, they're gonna watch some Netflix, maybe they're not gonna do it on the device you want them to, so we gotta be a little bit careful with making sure people don't go crazy. But we can get in here and we can actually carve out and remove the applications that we don't want deployed, but we can also govern the deployment of the applications that we do want them to use. For instance, I am actually pushing Google Chrome out to all of my users. Users at Contoso have decided that that's their preferred browser. But we do have some Power BI desktop users, and I want to make sure that we have a standardized deployment of Power BI desktop. And let's see, Office Pro Plus 64, which we covered a little bit. I want to make sure that my users are not accidentally doing a 32-bit of Office. So we've set these deployments, and now if I come back over here as Diego, when Diego decides he wants to get these applications, all he really has to do is fire up his company portal app right here, which is what you get when you're a managed device by Intune, and you're going to see all the applications that Diego can choose to deploy. In our environment, we wanted to make sure that users were getting the new Edge too, so we made this available for our users. We can come in and define app categories. We can set up that some things are productivity based, or they're core workload or whatever. And once we've got our applications built the way we want, we make them so that the users can simply click on them and hit install, reinstall, uninstall, whatever it is they need to do to be up and running with that application. Now you can see that Power BI reports it is already installed. I believe Chrome will do the same thing, and if I look in here, I should be able to scroll down. There's Chrome, and Power BI desktop is right there as already installed. So where that becomes powerful is, again, now I have control over how the application is deployed to those users. And from an administrator perspective, I can come back over into my application and I can see, hey, what's the actual deployment scope looking like for this? Hey, look at that. 2 users requested it, 2 users got it installed. If I want to go back to Chrome, I can look and see that, yikes, we had a couple users that failed to get it, but I don't have to wait for them to call me to know that they failed. I'm going to be able to come into my user installed status and see, oh, it looks like Diego actually had a failure with this. And Adele, for whatever reason, chose not to install it. So I can see before the users call me what are the challenges that they're experiencing with these applications. And again, I can govern all kinds of fun stuff about exactly who gets them, exactly who doesn't get them, and pretty much anything I want to in terms of the actual control of the deployment of the application. So we are just about 10 minutes from the end. Dan, do we have any open questions that we can take a moment to answer?
Yeah, very informative. Thanks, Adrian. I've been monitoring the question and answer, and if there are any further ones, please feel free to drop them in there and we'll make sure they get addressed with Adrian. There is one off the top, Adrian. Earlier on, you were showing the SharePoint document and you were downloading or sharing over to another file share, in this case, Google Drive. Would the same classification of that document hold true if you were saving to like a USB stick or a flash drive?
The application is a Windows Information Protection, basically allows me to define a set of areas that I trust and a set of areas that I do not trust. I should not be able to copy that document to a USB drive, but to be honest, I have not tested it in this particular environment. What I would encourage, though, is that if you're looking at using Windows Information Protection, you do consider it to be an additional layer of security beyond rights management, or use the two in conjunction. So the thought would be that, you know, I don't want you putting this document in Google Drive, but if you do, I also have encryption and rights management on top of it. Or I don't want you to put it on a USB drive, but if you manage to find a way, then I'm also going to still continue to have rights over the content in it as well. So this is simply saying that the file itself can or cannot live in certain places. It's not governing what to do with the content of that file. So it's not a direct answer, but the thought is that we want to have multiple tools working in conjunction with each other.
Right, that makes sense. Other than that, the Q&A section looks fairly clean.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think we've come to the end of the content that I was looking to project.
That's great.
Came in a little quicker than I thought I would. Hopefully, didn't go too terribly fast there.
No, it was fast paced, but I think that's helpful when you're throwing information at us, and we'll drink from the fire hose. But if there are any questions to follow up, make sure to reach out either to Adrian or your sales rep from Synergy Technical. They'd be happy to get you connected to have a conversation more in depth than what you saw today. And this was recorded, so we'll make sure to publish that out to our website as well as soon as that's published here from the Teams live event.
And Dan, I do want to cover one more quick thing too, talking about that Windows information protection, because it does not get a lot of attention. What you might notice here in the screen share that I have back on Diego's machine is that these applications that are pinned to the start bar are all governed by Windows information protection. So you can see the little briefcase for these applications right here on the list. So anything that I pull from any one of those applications is going to be governed by those policies. So users do get a quick cheat sheet view that that's actually already happening.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for showing that.
Sure.
I don't see any questions coming in. Hopefully everyone found this helpful and informative. And like I said, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Adrian or your sales rep with Synergy Technical, and they'd be happy to get you connected with the right resource. Thanks everyone for joining.